Hey, beautiful humans. Thank you for tuning into the Love and Life podcast, the podcast where we talk about how to live and love authentically, whatever that might look like to you. I'm your host, Elizabeth Cunningham. Let's dive in. All right, y'all. How are we doing today? I am feeling vulnerable in sharing about this topic, which is around community and community and polyamory specifically. But as always, I think that you can spread these topics out to non-monogamy in general. I think that they're just applicable in life in general. I think that all of us are dealing with very similar things, just in nuanced ways. So community is something that everyone is experiencing or wants to experience or avoids experiencing, as we will talk about today. um, and regardless of what community you may be in. Um, but I wanted to talk about community in polyamory specifically because that's something that is obviously near and dear to my heart. And so this episode is going to be a little bit more about my personal experience inside of community, and I want to give a little bit of a background here as well. So I've been hosting these events. I gave myself this challenge this year to host 7 events in 1 year. And I don't know if I'm ever going to do this again. But it was a good challenge. And one of the reasons why I wanted to give myself this challenge of hosting events is because I wanted to have a greater sense of community. I wanted to be able to provide. Previously to hosting these events, I was just interviewing people on my previous podcast, which was the Elizabeth Cunningham Show. And I was interviewing different people, and I love interviewing people. And I love one of the things that I love about interviewing people is that it gives people such a depth of resources just in one place, just by interviewing multiple people. And I mean, that's why, podcasts like that do really well, is because it's so great to just go to one spot. Like, I love Oprah's Super Soul podcast, right? Because she interviews all these different amazing people. Um, but that was one of the reasons for that. But then in completing that show, I was really bummed because I really love interviewing people, and it kind of came across my path to start doing these online events. And so it's just been a progression. Last December, the theme was from monogamy to polyamory. And then in March, the theme was, will polyamory actually work for me? And then we kind of proceeded from there with communication and polyamory to sex and polyamory. And now we're having this event about community and polyamory. And just to give you a sneak peek of what's coming up, the next event in October will be about families and polyamory. And then the last event in December will be about breakups in polyamory. So it's kind of this progression. So this one happens to be about communities and polyamory. And I've been really nervous to do this event because I have a lot of trauma in community. And you can also, this is my tell when I have something difficult to talk about, is that I give a lot of background information. I'm dating this new person, and we were hanging out the other day, and one of the questions was, can you see I'm stalling again? And one of the questions was, what are traits that are bad or negative, or things that you're trying to work on about yourself that really impact your relationships, and how do you work on those? How are you overcoming those? How are you being aware of those? How are you overcoming those? And one of the things for me is that when I think that I'm going to say something that is going to be upsetting, or something that I don't know what the reaction of my partner or partners will be. I will be like, I'm really nervous to say this, or I don't know how to say this, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, great. Enough stalling. So, trauma in community. One of the things about my trauma in community is that in putting on this event, which is why I, gave the whole backstory. But in putting on this event, I've really had to look at how deep seated this trauma is for me. And it really goes all the way back to like when I was 5, there was an incident where I felt like I didn't belong because I was a girl. And I grew up in a neighborhood of boys. And then there was an incident when I was 10 and I moved to a new state and a new school. And I felt rejected by like the popular girls. Like it's such a silly I'm not going to go into the full story, but it is so reminiscent of like Mean Girls. It's just ridiculous. Um and then, went to high school, and there were things that happened in high school that made me feel like an outsider in my dance, on I did dance team in high school, and so like I felt like an outsider on my dance team. But at least I had like other outsiders with me on my dance team. Like we jokingly called ourselves like the rejects of dance team, and it was like our fun, silly, sarcastic way of like not fully feeling like we were a part of, the rest of the crew. But then there's stuff around like one of my best friends stopped talking to me our senior year, and I also the first time that I was sexually assaulted was after high school, and I like lost friends and people didn't believe me or blamed me. And then moving into college, there were, different things that happened in college where I just, it has kind of perpetuated this cycle, right? And so if and then after college, I completely lost a group of friends, because someone, again, it was around like sexual assault, and I was not going to tell anybody, but I told 5 people about it, specifically because of the trauma that I'd had from the first one. And then it leaked out, and then like and then I lost like an entire group of friends because yeah, a lot of them believed the person who I was accusing is the wrong word, because I was really not saying anything. But for, brevity's sake, the person who I was holding responsible for it um had I guess a stronger argument than I did. And so I lost a bunch of friends with that. And so it just kind of perpetuated this cycle of like, people don't believe me, I'm on the outside. Even if I do get a really strong community of people, eventually that won't be the case anymore. And then there was other things around just like being a woman and being an attractive woman and like being like centered or objectified in a community that was either more male dominated or that was more about like sex and sexuality. And so I've had a lot of things around community where I like organizing things. I like organizing events. I like bringing people together because I love people. But I don't I've had a hard time believing that there would be a community where I would feel safe and where I would feel accepted, and that it wouldn't all crumble to pieces eventually, that I wouldn't be taken advantage of, that etc. Right? So I have had a lot of trauma around community, and I've, some of you who follow me on social media may have seen a post that I did recently that was like, I actually have been living in Seattle for 9 years and I've never sought out community here before. I have met people individually who are polyamorous and non monogamous, and I've kind of built my own friend group. um, that of people, and pretty much all of my friends are polyamorous or non-monogamous in some way. Um, and so in that way, I have a lot of support inside of like polyamory and non-monogamy and like being accepted. But as far as like going to events or even hosting like local events in Seattle, like I've never done that before because I just have this fear. And in hosting this event, that's coming up on Saturday, by the way, you should go. This in hosting this event on Saturday, that's all about finding community, it's about healing community, it's about creating community, it's about the importance of community, it's about why people don't join communities like myself, and possibly like the shame or trauma or history that you have. Um, like it's been it has been really healing, but it's been really confronting because I've been having to confront all of these stories that I have about community. And so if there's anybody else who has similar sentiments, and there are a lot of reasons why people avoid community. This is just my again, like I told you at the beginning of this episode that this was more about me personally. But there are a lot of reasons why people don't feel safe in community or why they feel that communities might not be for them. I'm thinking specifically of in the non-monogamous community of people of color, because there are a lot of just white spaces in the non-monogamous community, and that there has to be, which is one of the things that we're talking about at the community event on Saturday, um, is about how do you have inclusiveness and how do you have people who historically have great reason to not feel safe in white spaces, feel safe, feel included. What does that even look like? And how can we be a part of the solution to that instead of perpetuating the problem? And so, yeah, I have another speaker who's talking about something similar to that. And also, inside of my own healing in putting this event on, one of our speakers is talking about how do you contribute to community. So it's not that you are the one creating the community, but now you've joined this community, and how to not be passive, how to not just expect the community to provide something for you, but rather how do you be a contributing factor? How do you make community a reciprocal relationship? And the other conversation that's come up inside of that is, if we think about community as a reciprocal relationship, then how do you heal a community when community has ruptured? And I had a specific conversation with someone about, and their take was that, and this is speaking like super generally, like this is a very nuanced thing, and I'm not doing it justice to say it like as briefly as I am. So just like follow me on this, okay? So the conversation was, if community is a reciprocal relationship and there's always ruptures in community, because there's always ruptures in relationships, like we're going to, even if it's just a one-on-one relationship, we're going to do harm to one another at some point, like probably not intentionally, but the way that, our trauma presents in one person versus the trauma presents in another person, or people's different backgrounds or whatever, like we're just going to step on each other's toes at some point. Like that is part of relationships. And that's why we have people like me who are like, this is how I help you communicate through that, or this is how I help you heal through that, or this is how we're going to heal individually so that we can heal together, right? So if we think about community as a reciprocal relationship, how do we heal in community? And one of the things that I see that I don't think is healthy is, or should be like the go-to, I'm not like saying take this off the table completely, because, but one of the things that I think is a go-to for people that I think should be like a last resort is completely excommunicating people or completely dividing off like that. Now we have this community and we have this community, right? Like completely having like a separation, like, oh, we don't talk to these people, or we don't talk to anyone who associates with these people, or if you have this idea, then you're not a part of, I'm not even going to include you in any event. I'm never going to sponsor anything. I'm never going to sign off on anything that you're doing because you have this specific idea and I disagree with it. And I think that divisiveness is a part of human nature, but it's also something that when we can be conscious of and we can be conscious, aware, compassionate human beings, that we need to recognize that we can't just cut people off, or else we're going to create as much divisiveness inside of our quote unquote community as there is in any other section of the world. I'm thinking specifically about the thing that came up for me was like religion. Like there's so many different like sectors of Christianity, right? Where it's just like, oh, you believe this, but I believe this. So even though we believe in the same thing, we are rivals? Like, what? And then we just have these divided and opposing communities and sects instead of a community in which healing can happen. Like there's no healing that can happen in divisiveness. And I think that that's something that I've been really burned by in the past, so it's, close to my heart. But it's also something that I see happening in like, and listen, like that's the easy thing to do. The easy thing to do is to be like, great, we're not talking to you anymore. Great, we're excommunicating you. Great, we're a different group now. Great, I'm not going to ever do anything with this idea ever again, ever, and you suck. Like, that's the easy thing to do. And listen, I get it, because as humans, we do the easy thing. We just do by default. We do the even though we do it when we do it unconsciously, okay? Unconsciously, our brain just goes, this is the best option. And then we do it without a thought. And then we justify it because humans are justification machines. We can justify literally anything. People justify murder. Okay. So I understand you have justifications for the things that you do, say, feel, act. And I'm not saying that it is never a good idea to, split off or to not have contact with people. Like sometimes, again, in one-on-one relationships, sometimes that is the best thing to do, is to be like, all right, well, like we're just gonna go our separate ways. But I don't think that that is the first resort. Like usually in one-on-one relationships, that's not the first resort. When we think of one-on-one relationships, we think about, okay, how can we heal this? How can we talk through this? What do we need? Like, do we need to get a therapist or a coach or read books or listen to podcasts or go to classes or talk to our families or whatever? Like, what do we need to do so that there can be repair and resolution here? And I think that sometimes in community, and I would also say, especially with like the mob mentality of the internet and the mob mentality of social media, things can just get super divisive really quickly. And that hurts us so much. Okay, I feel like this is starting to get into a soapbox. But I guess it's my podcast. But my point being is that I think that if we want to talk about community and we want to talk about how important community is, because I think everyone in the non-monogamous community agrees, not everyone, most people in the non-monogamous community agree that community is so 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 important. Then we need to figure out, we need to learn, we need to gain the skills to have community and have community work and have it work over time, even when there are ruptures, because there will be, right? So there's my 2 cents about community. And, I want to invite you to the event that I'm hosting this Saturday. It's free, it's virtual, and it's live. I'm going to be the flow of the day. How the flow of the day is going to go is that I'm going to start off the day. The first half an hour is just going to be me. What I do in the first half an hour of my events is I share about what we're going to do during the day, but also the best way to show up. Like, how is the best way to listen? We don't think about that very often, but how is the best way to listen to something so that you can get the most out of this event for yourself? And then we're going to have 2 speakers and then a Q&A with those speakers, 2 speakers, Q&A, 2 speakers, Q&A, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, until the end of the day. And like I said, there's going to be Q&A, so you can ask questions live to everyone who is going to be there. So some of the people who are going to um, be our speakers are Bronwyn, also known as Minka Guides, who has helped organize community and the Enum community in London, Mickey Bay, Laura Boyle of Ready for Polyamory, Nika Sherrill of the House of Sherrill, Veronica Monet, who's someone who's been organizing in community with polyamory for several decades, Kate Kincaid, who's one of the co-creators of the Southwest Love Fest, Alana Fellon, who is the polyamorous librarian, and Elisa Owen, who is a non-monogamous community organizer in the Bay Area who specializes in inclusivity. So we have a lot of amazing people who are going to be there. And really, again, what I want people to get out of this event is either finding community, because there's going to be a lot of resources shared, healing in community, because there's also going to be a lot of conversations about how we can do that, and also creating community. Are you someone who sees a need in your area or online and feel called to fill that need? Then this is a great opportunity to get resources on how to do that as well. So I would love for you to be there. Definitely reach out to me if you have any questions. My email is love@elizabethannecunningham.com. I believe it's in the show notes. I can double check. But yeah, reach out to me if you have any questions. And the link for this event is going to be in the show notes of this episode. So come hang out. Come join. It's free. What are you doing? What are you doing on Saturday? All right. I love you all so very much. And if this episode was helpful for you, please consider sharing it. Be the person in your life who shares shares positivity, shares growth, shares resources, shares knowledge. We need more people who are sharing the love, spreading the love, and having conversations about how we can heal and be together. So thank you for doing that. I appreciate you. I love you so much. I'm here for you. And I am looking forward to seeing you on Saturday. All right. Bye. Thank you so much for joining me today. What are your takeaways? What is an action that you're going to take that will have this make a difference in your life? However small, take that action. Don't let this just be a good idea. Make that 1% shift in your life today to live more freely and authentically. If you'd like to learn more about my coaching, my classes, or the events that I host, check out my website at www.elizabethannecunningham.com. Until next time, keep loving.